Guru team, welcome back. I have managed to squeeze in a little extra time to finish the introduction to the Farm Sim 2022-25 showcase. So I thought we'll jump in. We'll finish the last three things that I wanted to finish, which are the settings and a quick run through the guidance, I guess, manual that goes along with it that you can read. So we'll have a look here. This is all pretty straightforward stuff. You can actively pause the game. So there you go, it's paused. Which is fine, because when you're in the menus, it doesn't actually pause the game. The game just keeps running. So if you want to actively pause it while you, I don't know, go get a drink or, you know, have to deal with other things, that's fine. You need to come into the game settings and do that. Game save name, etc. Autosave, you know, whatever, up to you. Now then, timescale is interesting. The timescale... there's a clock to the game, right? So there's an internal clock to the game, and the game tells you what time of the day it is. And the time scale determines how fast the day clock changes. Now that has relevance to a couple of other things that we'll talk about later. But we obviously have everything from real time up to 360 times real time. So obviously this is a multiplier, and the way this works is when you're at real time, 1 minute equals 1 minute in the game. 1 minute in real life equals 2 minutes in the game, 3 minutes in the game, 5 minutes in the game, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 30 minutes, an hour, pardon me, 1 minute equals 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. So, and that's half speed. So you have all of these options. Now, I play around about between 5 and sort of 10, and the reason I play between 5 and 10 is because there is an awful lot of time to do nothing in this game. Like I've said when we went through the calendar, there are months literally where you're just sitting around waiting for your crops to change. Why this really matters, and we'll skip ahead from the other two and we'll skip here to this one, days per month. So the reason this matters is obviously the game is played over the progress of a year and the 4 seasons in the year, and you can set how many days, that is how many 24-hour periods, determine a single month. So if you have it set for 1 day equals 1 month, then when 24 hours pass, 1 day has passed, and therefore 1 month has passed. Now, if you have a lot of fields and a big farm and a lot of things to do, you're going to run out of time to do things. If you set the time scale way up to say 1 minute equals 1 hour, and you've got 1 day per month, right? You've got 24 minutes to finish a day, and then it's a new month. In 48 minutes, so less than an hour, you will have passed through your entire planting season or harvesting season, which are usually 2 months, excepting poplar and grass and things at the bottom, but that depends on when you plant it and how long it takes to mature, time of the season, etc. So you're going to run out of time, or you're going to have years really zipping by. So there's 2 ways you can adjust this. You can determine that you want the days to flow through faster, and then add the days per month up, and you can go right up to 30. It doesn't go up there quickly. I think it's probably easier if you go the other way. Go from 28 goes to 28. So it can go to 28 days for a month. So you can say, I want the days to go quicker. I want to experience faster days. But I want the months to be really long. So you've got 28 days per month, which is really quite long. That's very, very long. So you might choose that. Or you might say conversely, I want the days to go really slowly, but I want the months to go past real quickly, and set it for 1 day. I'm not going to tell you there's a right way or a wrong way to this. I mean, it's entirely up to you. There's a whole load of YouTubers doing it in different speeds and different rates, and the question for you as well is you want to keep this constant or not? Because what you might say is, well, during the busy months, I might slow this down, say 3 times timescale, and say 3 days per month, and that gives you ample time to do everything that you want to do, make a whole load of money, change the things that you want to change, etc., etc., progress the game as much as you can during the busy season. During the quieter seasons, when there's less to do and you're maybe picking up the occasional contracts and things, but you're really just waiting, you might want to ramp this up to more like 10 and keep the days per month down to 1. In which case, the quieter seasons go a little bit quicker, and you can kind of, get on to the seasons that really matter. Or you can just pick one and say, this game, I'm going to go with 3 and 5. Just say, that's the way we're going to do it, and we're going to go 5 times speed and 3 days per month. And that gives you a reasonable amount of time to do things. It also depends on the kind of game you want to play. If you want to play a game where you do all the work as much as you can, that is time consuming. Some things, especially like grass and hay, baling, there's a lot of steps to that. Once your grass matures, you got to cut the grass. If you want hay, you've got to ted the grass. You've got to make it drier. Then you've got to windrow the grass so that you can pick it up. Then you've got to pick it up and bale it into whichever kind of bales you want. If you want to silage it, you need to wrap it. If you just want to sell it, you need to then go and pick up all the bales and take them to somewhere where they can sell it. If you want to store it, then you need to take it to somewhere that you've got space to store it. And it may not easily fit into your store, so you might have to drop it off and then use another piece of equipment, like some kind of a loader or something, to stack it in a barn, because the way it's dropped off doesn't make it easy to stack, and so on and so forth. So, and you might have 3 massive fields, and each one of those fields, and I kid you not, in terms of real life time, might take 2 hours just to harvest, right? Before we even talk about stacking, you could be at one field for 2 hours by yourself easily on one of these larger fields. So if it's the kind of game where you want to take control and you want to do all the work and you want to really immerse yourself in the sim, you'll want to keep these timescales as low as possible. If you want to use contracts and things, and you want to use AI workers, and you're doing a kind of more of a farm management space, you might decide to speed things up a little bit, because you're like, well, I don't want to wait around, so we'll get all this stuff done and we'll move on, and I'm not going to be doing it myself, so I'd like time to pass relatively quickly. Now, I'm going to caveat that right now. Changing the time scale up here does not change how fast the equipment moves in the game. So it still takes as long as it takes to do what you're going to do in real life. This is the game speed changing. So you change this all the way up. The tractors don't go faster, right? The tractors go at the same speed, no matter what time scale you've got, no matter how many days per month you've got. The vehicles all travel at the same speed. Everything moves at the same speed. The problem with contracts and AIs then is, if you hire an AI worker, they're paid by the time in which they're doing things. If you're leasing a piece of equipment, you're leasing it by the day and hour and parts thereof and various other bits and pieces. So it will still take them 30 minutes to harvest that field in real life terms, regardless of the time scale. But what you pay could change quite a lot, because your 30 minutes might be 30 minutes. Your 30 minutes might be the equivalent of 3 days, right? So bear that in mind as well. So there's quite a lot of complexities in managing the timescale and what you want to do with it, and whether you want to micromanage it jump in and go, right, I've heard a bunch of AI workers, I'm going to slow it down one for one because I don't want to pay for it. I just want them to do it, and then when it's done, I'll speed it back up again, you know? Is that cheating? Is it unfair? I don't know. It's your game. Play it the way you want to play it. I mean, it's entirely up to you. What are your goals? What are your outcomes? Or do you just want to set it and go, right, this is it. We're going to work to this time scale, and we're going to see how efficiently we can run things on this time scale. Entirely up to you. But it is important. It's probably one of the largest important factors in the game is the time scale and days per month, in my opinion. You know, other people will obviously change that. Economic difficulty just sets how the market behaves, which is fine. Again, you might want better pricing, more casual stuff. The market might not be important to you. You might want to really go hard and try and get really good bargains, etc. All the rest of it. Traffic. It's up to you. I mean, I leave the traffic on because it doesn't really get in the way. It's not heavy. You know, there's not a lot of traffic. On most maps you play in, you'll maybe see cars occasionally, but not a lot. So, you know, and it's not like you see other tractors driving around doing fields. Although that would be nice, but I can understand why it would be hard for the game to keep track of all those objects doing things on fields and so on. So, up to you. Do you want traffic or not? Is it immersive or not, etc. Seasonal growth, yes, paused or no. Look, I like it. I like the fact that we have the seasonal growth. Seasons was a mod that came in. I don't think they had it. I think it came in for 19. Do I remember Seasons in 19 or not? I can't remember. But it's kind of. I think it's realistic enough. I think it's a realistic enough bit of the game where you can say, actually, yeah, I want to work within the seasons. You can turn them off and say, well, I don't want to work within the seasons. So then you can plant whenever, do whatever, whenever. So you're just going straight from harvest to plant, to harvest to plant, harvest to plant, and you can do it as frequently as you like, as often as you like, and you get in a situation where you can do. You might get, I don't know, you might get 3 yields from one field per year if you're lucky, depending on what you're growing. You might only get 2. Things like that. It's still going to take the plant as long as it takes the plant to grow once you stick it in the ground. I'm not really sure on the algorithm how they work that with seasonal growth off. They probably still work it from the days per month, so they're still doing the counting for the duration it takes for the plants to mature. Behind the background, there's just no visible seasons happening. I like it on. I think it's good. I think it's also nice to see the map changing. You see the effects of spring, summer, winter, snow on the ground. Little things like the housing assets have snowmen and things coming up, and Halloween things at the right time of the year and so on. So I like it. Up to you though, you know. The fixed visual month is... You might want to go through seasons, but you don't like the change and stuff. You want to look the same. I don't have a fixed visual month. I like it to change. Snow, do you want it or do you not want it? That depends, because you can actually have issues with snow, but you can also pick snow up. So as it says, it can be moved by vehicles, and you can get yourself gritters, and you can get yourself snow plows and things. I like it being on, but again, it's up to you. Now these are pretty good, because these are really critical, and these really affect the extent of work that you need to do. Crop destruction. Now, this applies to your crops, but not other people's crops. So you can't go and trash other people's crops because you drive over them. However, if you drive over your own crops, you'll wreck it. So the issue is there's different setups for tractors that allow you to drive across crops. And there's some machinery that doesn't allow you to drive across crops. And if you drive across the crops, you'll wreck it, which, you know, makes sense. So I like it on. I think it adds a sense of realism, and it just means you have to manage your vehicles a little bit better. You need different kinds of tires for different types of work, essentially. You can use narrow tires if you're weeding an existing crop, or spraying an existing crop, or fertilizing an existing crop, for example. But when you're plowing a field and you need a bit more grunt, you might put on some larger, heavier tires that mean you can drag a heavier bit of kit around and do some, deep plowing or whatever. Entirely up to you. I like it on. Periodic plowing. So this is, as it says, do you need to periodically plow your fields? It will tell you when your fields are getting a bit tired, you need to plow them. Again, that adds a task. You need to go out and do that. It will, if you don't do it, your yields will drop. And you can see there it says to keep your yield high. And we'll talk about yields and yield bonuses later. Field stones. So this was a new one they brought in for 22. It didn't happen in 19, but it does in FS22, and I'm presuming it will continue in FS25. Is when you plow up fields and cultivate fields and do a bunch of other things with fields, you can turn up stones, and the stones affect your yield. I also think they increase the damage on some of your equipment when you're dragging it through stones. So you actually need to, there's machines that can pick up stones. It also depends on, you can generate more and or different kinds of stones depending on the way you treat your field. So this adds another layer of management to your field that you need to be aware of. I'm happy as a relatively experienced player to keep it on and manage it from my perspective. Lime, again, you know, are you using lime on your fields? Lime in this case is not a fertilizer, it's a soil conditioner. So it doesn't add fertilizing potential, but it does do something to help break up and condition the soil, which is my understanding of how they use lime in the real world. So do you want to do it? Do you not want to do it? Do you require it? I keep it on. Again, something you need to manage. Weeds. Will you get weeds? Won't you get weeds? Yes or no? Pretty straightforward. If you do, you're going to have to do something about it because they're going to get in the way and they're going to reduce your yield. At least I believe so. It doesn't actually say that weeds reduce your yield. It's certainly something to look into. Pardon me. Then we have vehicle stuff. Do you want your vehicle to get dirty quicker? Not dirty? Slowly? Normally? A lot of that is really just cosmetic, to be fair. These are kind of, you know, do you want an automatic engine start? Do you have to get in and start it? I keep it on auto. Stop and go braking, keep on auto. Again, if you want to go for real kind of, you know, verisimilitude, then you can change it so you've got to be, you know, you've got to have a lot more manual control over how you drive your vehicle. Now this one is interesting. So trailer fill limit. So the trailers, and there's some of the trailers you can get which are massively sized. You know, they've been modded to have tremendous capacity so that it makes it easier for people to cart stuff around, because it doesn't matter, you're not impacting the axle weight. So the trailer can carry as absolutely much as it's modded to carry, but it doesn't change the actual weight in the vehicle. Because obviously vehicles have an axle weight, right? So in the real world, so they're only allowed to carry a certain weight, and that would depend on the kinds of things that you are carrying and what its relative density is, without getting too technical into it. So, do you want that on or off? I've recently had it on, and I quite like it. It's quite interesting because the trailer I was using when the axle weight was on basically meant that I could only fill it to 57% capacity with, what was I loading it with? Soybeans. So I could only load it to 57% capacity because of the weight. Not because of the actual volumetrics, but because the axle weight had been reached. Which meant, obviously, I needed to do more work because I needed to do more trailer loads. Did it really impact? No, it didn't. Not really. And it wasn't even a big bit of kit. It was just one of the smaller harvesting wagons. So, I mean, it was real easy. So, I'd keep it on. Fuel usage, normal, low, or high. It's up to you. I leave it normal. Now then, this one for AI workers, this one is interesting, and it could be technically argued it's cheat. So it depends on, again, how immersive you want the game to be and how much effort you really want to put into it. So we've got the categories here, which is 5 of them: fuel, seeds, fertilizer, slurry, and manure. So these are the tasks that you undertake, ignoring fuel. These are the tasks that you undertake that requires you to buy things, right? You buy a planter, the planter doesn't come with seeds in it. You have to buy seeds and put the seeds in it, and then you have to go up and down your field and plant it. Now, planters have a capacity tank that you fill with seeds, and some of them have additional tanks that you can add on, and some of them have huge capacity. It also depends on the types of seeds that you have, because obviously, if you know in real life, some seeds are very big. Take potatoes, for example, which is a seed potato, right down to, you might get things that are very, very, very small, like grass seed, right? Grass seeds are very, very tiny, so, and you can get everything in between, peas and, all kinds of stuff and all the rest of it. So when you fill up your tank and you drive up and down, you might not have enough seeds to completely seed your field. In the real world, you would have to take your seed tank and you would have to go and refill it up again, and then you would have to come back and continue, right? You don't have to do this with an AI worker. You might have a big square field and you say, right, I want this planted with, cotton or something. So you fill up your seed truck with cotton and you get started, and by the time you're, 10%, 20, 25% through that field, you're already 50, 60, 70% of the way through your cotton seeds. And you're like, blimey, I don't really want to have to buy more seeds. What I will do is I'll get an AI worker to do it, and he'll buy the seeds automatically. And you just hit the AI worker and you jump out and go off and do something different. The AI worker will finish the entire field using no more of your seeds. To be clear about that, they don't use the seeds when this is switched on. They don't use the seeds that are in the truck. Now, I do believe that you still need seeds in the truck to start with, because you need to select which seeds you're actually planting. That's another thing we'll get to. You don't buy specific seeds. You choose the seeds when you're filling the seeder, right? But so you put some seeds in your seeder. The AI will buy whatever those seeds are at a cost to you. And I think, I can't remember, but someone did an analysis of it, and it turns out to be slightly more expensive if they buy the seeds, right, than if you buy the seeds. If you buy the seeds yourself and you keep topping it up, it turns out to be cheaper than if you get them to buy it. But I don't think the difference in cost is dramatic. It does exist, but it's not dramatic. Is that real life? No, of course not. Of course not. Where are they magicking these seeds from? They just generate them from their butt? No, they don't. So it could be argued that that's unrealistic and you should switch it off. But is it easier? Oh gosh, yes, it's so much easier. Because then the AI worker stops, and then you need to go, and then you need to get the seeds, and you need to do everything else, and all the rest of it. At the end of the day, it's not game breaking because you still pay for it. You're not getting them free, right? You need to buy seeds to load up into your seeder to start with, so you probably have to buy something, so you've already paid for that. You have to have the seeder, and when the AI worker is using it, they're actually probably charging you more for the seeds than if you bought them yourself. So arguably it's a bit of a financial hindrance. Not a huge one, but it could be argued it's a bit of a financial hindrance. So it's up to you. I don't think it's game breaking, and I leave it on really because, like I said, farm management more than sim is my speed, so I keep it on. And the same applies to the other things that you need to purchase, which is fertilizer, slurry, and manure. Now, they also consider lime in here under fertilizer, because you won't see that, but they will buy lime. So if you've got fertilizer set, they will also buy lime at the same time. So I don't know why they don't have lime here. They've got seeds, fertilizer, slurry, and manure, which is fine, but they will also buy lime under the fertilizer section. So I tend to leave these all on, just for the sake of ease, really, more than anything. So there we are. So that's the main game settings. So like I've said, what I think we're going to do in this, because I'm going to spend a lot of time chin wagging. Days are passing while I'm standing here chin wagging to you. So I'm going to leave this at 5 times speed and 3 days per month from now on. So I'm not going to change it. I'm just going to leave it exactly like this, and we're going to run through it like this. I'm not going to change it up or down or change any of that kind of business. There's other ways to pass time that you can do, which is okay. So I'm going to leave it at that. They're my game settings. I would say it's a probably reasonably good beginner setting. I guess if you were a real beginner, I might turn some of these off until you get used to it. Once you get used to it, you might say, you know what, I'm getting along fine, I'm making money, I'm finding myself with spare time, I'm going to turn periodic plowing on and lime on or something, you know, and do it a bit at a time. But I've done it a lot, I understand it a lot, so I'm just going to leave all that stuff on, which is fine, and that's where we're at. General settings, on the other hand, help window. There's a help window which explains controls, and I'll talk about that when we get into the game as well. We'll probably hire a tractor and we'll have a look from inside a tractor what that looks like, and stick a bit of gear on it. We'll do a contract, for example, and I'll show you some of how the controls work. But I would keep it on unless you have a fantastic memory and dexterity. Keep it on. It's very, very helpful. Turning it off is like super real hard immersive stuff, and it's crazy. Colorblind mode, as you can imagine, you know, there's lots of colors in here, and if you struggle with particular color combinations, this will sort it out. Interactive zone markers, again, I like to keep on for arguably for verisimilitude. You could turn it off and say, well, people wouldn't paint these on the ground. Oh, they might not. I've been to lots of industrial sites where they have loading zones with arrows placed around them on the ground so people know where they're loading and offloading stuff. But it helps you understand where they are, so I'd leave it on. Info triggers is you know, useful things that gives you advice, etc. I'll leave it on for you guys so we can see. Field info is great. I think the difference with the field info is, well, let's have a look. So when you run over to a field and you go, hello, what's here? You see the field info at the bottom? Owned by Leroy Wilson. The crop type is sunflower. It's growing. He's got a plus 75% yield bonus. He's only 50% fertilized, right? So it's going to save because it's been a while. If we go back to our settings and we turn that off, right, it's now missing, obviously. It's still, we're down here on 45. So you can see that it's still, some of the information is still here. We can still see from this that it's growing. It's on its way to nearing being harvested. We can see that the field itself has only been fertilized once. There's a little area in the corner that got missed for some reason. And we know what's growing in it, but we don't know the details of all of the other bits and pieces that we said. So we don't know who owns it. We don't know the yield bonus. We don't know all that kind of stuff. This is the kind of thing that really plays into the precision farming mod. But if I were you, I would leave it on. Again, you know, up to you. Immersiveness and everything else. So blah 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 blah. What you want your money in, what you want your measure in, what you want your temperature in, all the rest of it. There's stuff with the radio. Do you want to hear the radio? I like it. And whether you can hear it always, whether it only plays when you're in a vehicle, etc. I like to leave it on. Reset the vehicle camera, which, you know, remembers the camera position for each vehicle once you exit it. I don't think that that's desperately important. The indoor camera stuff, once again, when you're in the vehicle, obviously, as you potentially know, farm vehicles tend to not have suspension, so they have suspended seats. So the seats inside the vehicles have suspension. The vehicles themselves don't tend to have the same kinds of suspension as your average road vehicle. So it's up to you whether you want to bounce around inside or not. I tend to keep it off. To be honest, I seldom play inside the cab, so it makes no difference. Dynamic vehicle camera. So it tries to stay horizontal, just makes it easier to get around. Invert look. Input controls can be a little bit interesting. There are some things that require use of an arm. There's some logging equipment, for example, that comes with, you know, it's like a high-ab crane, so it's got an arm on it, and you can extend the arm and reach the arm. You need to pick up your logs, you need to transport them into the back of your logging trailer, and you need to drop it, and so on. There are easier controls and less easier controls. I would, if I were you, use the easy one. Why make life hard for yourself? Camera sensitivity is, as it says, adjust the camera turning speed. Vehicle arm sensitivity, because sometimes you're trying to make minor movements, and sometimes your sticks just don't even want to play. I probably need to turn mine down, actually, probably to 50%, because I've got stick drift on my sticks, and I've turned my steering sensitivity down for the same reason. Direction change. If the vehicle direction change is automatically toggled or manually by pressing a button. I'm not actually sure I understand what that means. I leave it on automatic. And a gear shift, once again, if you want to go through like total immersion, that's great. If you don't, just leave it on automatic. I mean, it sounds like a good idea, but if you have a truck full of sunflowers that you're trying to cart halfway across the map, and there's things like level crossings that you need to stop at, and your truck has like 9 gears, oh man, why make it harder for yourself? Speedo display, you can do engine speed or vehicle speed. I like to see the vehicle speed. Trains, you can actually, if you have rented a train or own a train, I don't think you can own them, I just think you can rent them. You can choose whether you're inside the cab or not. I like to leave it on. This is for there are some wood harvesters, and they've got, you've probably seen them, it's an arm, and you reach out, you grab the bottom of the tree trunk, and you hit cut, and an automatic chainsaw comes out of the arm, cuts it, and then the arm rotates, flips the trunk over, and delimbs it, right? It goes meh, and cuts all the small limbs off. The small limbs, not the big ones. Right? It's very handy. You don't want small limbs, because the small limbs, they make carrying trees really difficult. There's a reason why logs in log trucks have no limbs attached. Volumes and things, entirely up to you. I turn the environment sound down because I've found in some situations you can get like a hiss. Even something more akin to a roar or a humming in the background is very off-putting. I don't know what it's about, but I've turned the environment volume down. I don't mind the master volume and the vehicle volume and everything. And I turn the radio down so that it's still playing in the background, which is good. You don't have to just listen to me gabbing on. But otherwise it's too loud. And the GUI is obviously, as it says, it's for the user interface. So there you go. These are more sort of your general game things. Now then, this is the help section, which I wanted to talk about before we go on any further. There's a whole load of stuff in here, which is very useful, and we'll touch on some of that. So, here it's just asking you what I said. You know, what are you going to do? Do you want to be a farmer? You want to try everything, probably, don't you? Agriculture, animal husbandry. There's lots of interesting things to do with animal husbandry. You can buy chooks, you can buy chickens, you can buy sheep, you can buy pigs, you can buy cows, you can buy different kinds of cows, different kinds of sheep. You can buy horses. And horses are particularly special because horses, you're not just breeding the horses, you actually have to ride the horses to make them worth more money. A well-ridden horse is worth more money than not. And also, if you're into animal husbandry, you need males and females, and you need to keep them happy so that they breed, and you can get babies, and then you might want to move the babies, and you might want to breed again, you might want to sell the babies, you might want to do a whole bunch of stuff. So animal husbandry is its own big thing as well, and you can do both. You can do both, cropping and animal husbandry, and in some cases it's very beneficial because you might be cropping things that produce hay. Well, guess what your animals need? They need hay for bedding, and they need hay to eat. So you can do that. If you're doing horses and you're growing oats, guess what horses eat? Horses eat oats, amongst other things. So you can make use of a proportion of the stuff that you harvest for your animals. For cows in particular, they have a thing called total mixed ration, which really puts on the beef and makes them worth more. And that's the other thing. What are you using them for, right? Are you using them for dairy? Because you can get dairy cows, you can get beef cows, you can get sheep. Are you using the sheep for meat, or are you using them for wool? There's different kinds of sheep that are better for different things. Some make better wool, some make better eating, and so on. So there's that kind of thing, which plays into it. So there's some complexities there. Forestry. There are very specific forestry maps where there is literally, I've seen one, there's literally nowhere to farm until you clear the forest and make somewhere to farm, if that's what you want to do. There is now in this one, wasn't in FS19, you can be a permanent forester, in that you can plant different kinds of forestry trees. So you can go out and plant trees that are good for different kinds of end uses, and we'll have a look at that later. So you could do one, all three, none of the above. You could technically not own any farm and just do contracts and just be a contract farmer and try and make money doing contracts, because you don't want to have to pay for the upkeep and doing all of this and all the rest of it. But if you're going to do contracts, that limits what you're going to be able to do, right? So you do need to be aware about that. I've talked about how to start, so we're not going to do that. The shop and things we'll have a look at. It's a place to go and buy stuff. I've covered some of the, that there are other places that you go and sell things and everything else. Do be aware that vehicles and tools do suffer wear and tear, and they do need to be repaired, and all of that. And there's a workshop that you can do that. We'll have a look at. It tells you this is starting equipment, which is fine. Is it? It depends. Depends what you're doing. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about that. Contracts we're going to have a look at. Build mode we can have a look at, but we'll have a look at it a lot later. The issue with build mode is, which comes in if you're deciding to do some, big changes. You want to make a big massive farm empire or something. But like most build mode stuff, it really burns through the money very quickly. If you start trying to, they show a person raising or flattening, or I don't know what they're doing there, but that'll cost them an absolute ton of money because just how expensive it is. Seasonal farming, we've briefly touched on all of the seasons and snow and how the months change and everything else. AI workers, again, we've briefly touched on. There are, as it says here, there are also different jobs. So there's also things AI workers will not do. And there's problems with AI workers still. So it was worse in Farm Simulator 19. My AI workers would do all kinds of crazy nonsense. And you would have to keep a very close eye on them, because they would drive into gullies and ditches. They'd get hung up on trees. They sometimes got confused if two fields were too close together. They wouldn't recognize, depending on the width of the equipment. Like if you had a wide piece of equipment, which was like, say you can get very wide cultivators and things. If you had a very wide cultivator, sometimes they would just carry on into the field next door. And if you'd already planted one field and were cultivating the next one, they could inadvertently rip up your field that you planted and destroy it. So the AI workers can come with problems, trust me. And if they get your gear stuck in a ditch, you have to recover it back to the shop, and then you have to go back to the shop and pick it up. It can just be a nightmare. The things that they won't do, so they'll work within a field boundary. They'll do simple things. They'll do things like mowing, tedding, windrowing. They'll do cultivating. They'll do stones. They'll do liming and fertilizing and slurry and manure and all the rest of it. But what they will not do is they will not bale things for reasons that will probably become apparent later. And they will not pick up bales of things either for reasons that will probably become apparent later. Now, they have these other things that they were trying to get in, and it was a mod on PC, which was to get AI workers to carry goods to sale. So you have a silo, and say your silo is full of wheat, and you get a great demand somewhere for wheat, and you're like, well, I've got 150,000 liters. It's going to take ages because I've got a, 10,000 liter truck, and I don't want to do 15 runs myself. I'll set up an AI to do 15 runs for me while I do the field, right? That's the intention with this one, is that you can get them to load and deliver. If it's a very simple thing, you've already loaded it up, you know where it's going to, you just want to get the AI to deliver it there, you've got deliver. And go to is just to send it to a place. So you might have a whole load of gear that you need, well, not a whole load, but you might have a big bit of gear on a slow moving vehicle that you've got to get across the map, and you don't want to spend time doing it. You can put an AI in it and say, I want you to take this bit of kit to that field, which is equivalent to go to. I've not used it a lot. We'll try and get them to do some things during our showcase and see how well it works. Like I said, the AI system comes with some issues, so there you go. So it talked about that and about the possibility of making looping jobs, so that they can do that. But just be aware they can be problematic, and even with the layouts of some of the fields, they think they're finished the job and they're not, and you go back and go, well, it's not finished. You gotta restart them again. So they're still not perfect. We'll see if there's any improvements for 25. Just list of the crops, list of the greenery, different kind of icons for various kinds of different things and all the rest of it, which is grand. Different icons for the different animals: cow, pig, sheep, chicken, horse, eggs, water, pig food, forage, blah 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 blah. Different kind of icons for all of the kinds of various other bits and pieces that you can get. Yield boosts. So you need to be aware of this for fields, and I did mention obviously in the state of the soil and everything else, is every time you do something positive to your field, you get a yield boost. So it's not like, as far as I can tell, there's a penalty. I mean, I guess there is. I guess there's an average yield for each field, and the more problems that happen on that field, the more the negative yield. So let's say you're expecting 10,000 liters off a field in an average condition. You plow it, you get stones. That might drop that yield by 2%, right? So you then find you've dropped 2%. You then didn't fertilize it, so that drops by another 2 or 3%. You didn't lime it, that drops by another 2 or 3%, and so on. So you have all those yield drops. Conversely, you've got your average field. You fertilize it. Oh, let's say, pardon me. Yeah, let's say fertilize it. Increases your yield bonus by 2 or 3%. You then lime it. Increases your yield bonus by another 2 or 3%. You then plow it, right? Increases your yield bonus by 1% or 2. You then get rid of the stones. Increases your yield bonus by a couple of percent. Then you fertilize it again because it will have changed its state. We'll talk about states. That increases your yield bonus by a couple of percent. Then you seed it. Nothing happens, you've seeded it. And you roll it. Rolling it adds another yield bonus. Right? And that's it. And you can get some of the fields I've been playing at have had a maximum of plus 100% yield bonus. So you can get a substantial yield bonus depending on the amount of work that you're prepared to put in. And these things help boost that. Other icons and shop icons. And there's a whole load of these which you can get into and see and all the rest of it, and everything else. So having a look here at the basics. Arable farming, we've talked about that. That's all those crops: wheat, barley, canola, sorghum, sunflower, soybean, corn, oilseed radish, which isn't really a crop that you sell, potatoes, sugar beet, poplar, sugarcane, cottons, grapes, and olives. You must cultivate, sow, and harvest. You have to do that to be able to get those things to grow. All of the other stuff that I said, fertilizing, lime, plow, stones, etc., is optional. You don't need to do it, but it will definitely increase the yield that you get off your fields if you do. That is the stuff that we talked about earlier in terms of the filters and what it means for the states of the fields. This is a bit of a talk about it starts to now get quite complicated because there's quite a complicated set of different sets of gear that you need to work with. So like we've said, you do need to cultivate, and when you are cultivating, there's different ways to cultivate. There's shallow cultivators, disc harrows, and power harrows. They've got different speeds, which may be important to you, different widths, which is definitely important to you, and different requirements in terms of the size of the tractor that you need, which is also important to you because tractors are very expensive pieces of kit. Your regular cultivator works well against weeds, but they do bring up large stones, which means you need to manage the stones more, and if you don't, they're more inclined to damage your gear. The shallow ones work wide and cover more ground, don't require as much effort or bigger tractors, and they bring up small stones, but they're expensive, and you'll probably also need to do a bit more weeding or spraying if that's what you want to do. Disc harrows and power harrows, again, lower requirements, work faster, don't dig up stones, and in some cases you can actually use direct sowing harrows and so on, and there's multiple use ones. So you may decide that what you want to actually do is go down the road of harrows and various other bits and pieces, and we'll have a look at some of that stuff. Plowing, we obviously talked about. You need to plow. There's all kinds of different kinds and sizes of plows, but there's also things called subsoilers and spaders. So they reduce weeds and the issues with yields, weeds, and increase your yields. Subsoilers can move a little bit faster, but they do dig up even bigger stones that you then have to go and manage. And when you're using a machine to lift stones, it has a capacity. Bigger stones will fill it up faster, which means you will need to empty it more. There's no real way to easily empty it other than take it to a crusher or have a crusher on your farm, etc. So there's those kinds of considerations. You can use plows to create fields. I'll maybe talk about that later when we're using a plow. Sowing and planting, we've got different kinds of ways to sow and plant, and different kinds of ways to put things together. And that one at the bottom is a direct seeder, and they have a marker out. I can't remember the exact specific name of it, but it's very handy, and I'll show you how to use one of those and when you're seeding, because it shows you how to get the most out of your seeding and how to get the most out of some of the other equipment you use as well. To harvest something, you need a harvester. which is obviously fine. And harvesters come in two parts. There's the harvester and there's the harvester head or header. And you need particular sized harvesters for particular sized headers, and each harvester has a different each header has a different kind of crop that it will head. Obviously they've got different kinds of combs and brushes and various other bits and pieces that they will use. And each harvester has a different capacity internal storage tank, because obviously, you know, as you've seen, when your harvester is full, you need a truck to come along and the harvester empties it, and then the truck carries away to the storage, and the harvester can keep on harvesting the field, and AI workers will help with that, although there's limits to what they can do. So this is a quick run through the various kinds of crops. The grain crops, which are the wheat, barley, sorghum, oat, canola, and soybean, i.e. it's a plant that produces something that you take off the head of it one way or another. And all grains can be used to feed animals, and some of them get, you know, better sustenance from other things than others. Pigs will eat pretty much anything. This is a catch crop, which is oilseed radish. You grow it, and then you dig it into the ground, and it acts as a natural fertilizer. I used it quite a bit in FS19. Up to you. Difference in the way you want to farm. Grass, we'll cover grass because we'll be doing a grass contract without a doubt somewhere along the line. You do need to do all of the things that I have said. Grass needs to be cut. If it wants to be dried to hay, it needs to be tedded. It's going to need to be windrowed. It's going to need to be baled. It's going to need to be dealt with. There are root crops, potatoes and sugar beet in particular, which have their own kinds of special gear. Potatoes can be a bit problematic because I'm not sure with sugar beet. Need to check, but potatoes definitely you need to head the plant first. You can get some harvesters that have a de-header attached, which is great. Some do not, so do be aware. For things like root crops, you need to de-head the plant first before you can harvest it. That's another step. And then for the likes of sugar beet, you can put the sugar beet into a sugar beet cutter, which you can then take off to a biogas plant, etc., etc. Corn and sunflowers in particular are different. Cotton, again, is another one, because you're pulling the cotton off the plant and leaving the plant in there, so then the plant needs to be dealt with. Very lucrative crop usually. I kind of like cotton. Sugarcane, special gear, special stuff, special way of dealing with things. Don't know if we'll get to sugarcane, but it's much of a muchness. Some of this stuff you just have to try. Grapes and olives we're definitely going to be trying, because they are very, very special, because you obviously need to do quite a bit more with grapes and olives. But we'll deal with that in terms of, you know, how you go through planting it, mulching it, cultivating it, fertilizing it, the harvesting machines and all the stuff that goes along with it. Great new additions that came in for FS22. Chaff and silage, it's another interesting one. Silage is good for fermentation process and biogas. You can make a lot of money from biogas and various other bits and pieces. And you can use silage in total mixed ration for your animals, for your cows, and so on. It's very, very interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting. Worth having if you're going to be doing particular kinds of crops. Like corn, wheat, barley, grass, sunflower, soybean, oat, or canola, for example. So we'll have a look at chaff and silage. Poplar is an interesting one. I have done poplars. They are technically a tree, but they're more like a kind of a brush, and they don't wither. So they grow up, and you harvest them down, and you turn them into wood chips, and you can sell the wood chips. Yeah, I don't know. I've done them before. I didn't find them to be great money makers, personally speaking, but I don't know. It's up to you. Yield we talked about. So we talked about lime. Spreading lime every 3 harvests gives you a 15% bonus on your yield. How about that? Every 3. So you can get 3 harvests out of your ground before you need to do it again. You do it, you get 15% bonus, which is good. Fertilizing. Spread fertilizer twice, plus 23% yield bonus each time. Right? Massive, massive bonus. Great stuff. Don't underestimate it. Removing weeds. This doesn't actually change the yield bonus as far as I can see. It just means that they get in the way. So I guess it just looks for weeds more than anything. Stone picking. Yeah, once again, doesn't really impact your yield, but it does impact your machinery. So your machinery will get damaged more if you don't deal with it, which is obviously a cost. Rolling is great. You do get a yield bonus. Doesn't tell you what it is, but you do get a yield bonus. Mulching is also good that you can do for particular kinds of crops. Forestry mulcher as well. You do get a yield bonus. It doesn't say what it is. And that's really it. We talked about a lot of that stuff. Animals wise, we have talked about the animals. We've talked about generally looking after animals, housing animals, manure, buying animals, reproduction, and so on. I'm probably going to skip the animals till we're ready to do animals. Also, I'm running out of time. Same with forestry and various other bits and pieces. So I might, in fact, I think what I'll do is I'll hold off on this one for the next episode. I did tell you there's a lot going on in here, and there is a lot going on in here. So we'll hold off. There's not much left to finish. We need to talk about animals, forestry, the basic economy, and a couple of other bits and pieces. So there's a few things left to do, and we will have finished the introduction. I promise, I swear. Honest, honest, honest. But I really want to know that we all know where we're starting from. We've all got everything. This is the last things to discuss. And if we've discussed these last things, we'll be able to move on, won't we? I hope. So yeah. So I once again, sorry, there's so much to cover, but I really want to cover it all, so we can go through it one bit at a time. And really, I don't need to rehash things or jump back in too much. So I do hope it's not boring you too much. I do hope you find it interesting. I do hope it's whetting your appetite for the game ahead and what all these things mean and how we apply all these things, which is part of the fun, of course. And of course, drop a like. Do feel free to subscribe to the channel. Aiming for 500 members. It would be really good if I could get there. And yeah, drop me any questions, any comments, any tips, any tricks, anything you've learned or found out, or anything you would like me to showcase in particular. And I will see you all again real soon. Ta-ta for now. PlayStation